Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is how to live abroad. This is Vietnam edition. Now, many of you know, or maybe don't know, that I spent the last 1 year living in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City to be exact. And this city has all kinds of marvels, but hey, no city is perfect, and it definitely has its ups and downs. Now, I would like to tell you how exactly I was able to live there, how exactly I was able to be there for such a long amount of time. And the most fascinating thing about it is that you could say I lived for free for 1 year in Vietnam. How, pray tell, did I do this? How is this possible? Am I making some elaborate story? Well, I'll let you decide. Now, the way I ended up going to Vietnam is I ended up applying to some jobs before going to Vietnam. So while I was in America, step number one was to do a job search. I was looking on different websites. Some were school websites, some were job listing, hosted type websites. I ultimately found the job on Facebook. And it was a pretty good offer. Notice I only say pretty good because there's always a better offer out there, but I was ultimately able to pass the interview. I did one interview with a recruiter in HR. Then we scheduled a demo lesson. She gave me some information in regard to a lesson. I made a quick little PowerPoint, a slideshow to demonstrate my teaching skills. This was for an English-based teaching job. Now, this company had jobs in mostly the public school sector. I guess we would say primary school, middle schools, high schools, as well as some 101s, VIP lessons. Now, I ultimately ended up selecting the primary school because my skill base is in the range of 9-year-olds to 12-year-olds. I have taught younger students. I have taught way older students. My younger students were about age 5. My older student, or should I say, my oldest student was about 38, and that happened in Vietnam. So from the age of 5 years old to 38, maybe a little higher. I might have even had one guy in his 40s, but long story short, I can teach. Now, I will say that it was a bit nerve-wracking on some of the interviews because I didn't just schedule one interview. I was sometimes doing anywhere from 1 to 3 interviews per week, and I did this across about a month. I recommend if you're looking for a job teaching English, you search for a job May or June. I ultimately signed the contract, I think, in July. The job, in terms of pay, was about $15 to $16 per hour. Of course, that was before tax, and it was a decent wage, right? You know, even back in the States, $15 to $16 is what a lot of people want to at least have as a new minimum wage. But I thought it would be a good re-entry to a newer career abroad teaching English. Now, my career was mostly in architecture, and that has its ups and downs. But this video is how to live in Vietnam. How did I do it? How did I live for free? Well, I ultimately got the job, and I ended up getting 2 jobs, one daytime job and one nighttime job. And the daytime job was for the public school. The hours were between 7:30 to 4 20. So I had plenty of free time, as well as I had a 2-hour break where a lot of people honestly just went home, took naps. Or at least that's what I did. Some of the teachers couldn't do this, so they would sleep on the floor, in their classroom, under the whiteboard, under the blackboard. And believe it or not, these primary school students, ages of 5 to about 11 or 12 years old, would sleep on top of their hard desks. Their desk would fold open to have enough room for 2 people, 2 children to sleep. Now, my daytime job was where I made most of my paycheck. Now, my nighttime job, I would work at night for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending. Usually it was about a 90-minute frame, those lessons. And most of these lessons, daytime or night, were ranging from 30 minutes to 90-minute classes, which are really fast. You know, some people ask me, how could you teach a lesson, an English lesson, in 35 minutes? How could you do it so fast? Well, it's not easy. I'll give you tips on that later. But I was moving at an incredible rate, and I thought, in terms of a con for the company, public school company, was that they expected too much in terms of a 30-minute lesson. They wanted me to teach these children listening, speaking, grammar, have multiple games, have music, and sometimes even video, all within 30 minutes. Sometimes the classes would be even less because you would have to get the class under control, and that can eat up 5 to 10 minutes of your time. So I had to get into a nice routine, a big tip. You have to get in a routine. You have to know what you expect in terms of the class, in terms of the learning, in terms of everything, the environment, how you're setting up with your teaching style, how your TA is helping you, whether it's with the board, whether it's with these children. We had to do all this. So back to the theme again, because I had to give you the overview, right? How I lived in Vietnam for free for 1 year, 2 jobs, and I guess you could say, long story short, was that my nighttime job, the one that I would go to at night and teach from 30 to 90 minutes, so either 3 classes or 1 class. This was mostly IELTS, International English Learning Testing System. Now, my night job, the one that I would go to maybe 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, that paid for most of my monthly expenses. Now, the monthly wage wasn't that much in terms of the second job. So that range could be anywhere from 5 million VND to maybe, I don't know, 12 to 15 million VND. So anywhere from like an extra $200 to an extra $600. It would depend on the month, of course, and how many lessons that I was scheduled to take. On average, I would be pulling in an extra $400. Okay, that doesn't sound that much, but you have to realize that there in Vietnam, during that time, my rent was only 5 million VND, 5 million dong. My rent was $200 per month, and I lived in a really nice house. I had a studio, apartment, full-size bed, fully furnished. I had my air conditioner. I had like a 40-inch TV. I had my Wi-Fi included, my utilities of electric and water included. I had my own bathroom. The house also provided laundry services in terms of the grandmother did my clothes. She washed and dried my clothes every 2 days. So my basic living was taken care of. And on top of that, my daytime company gave me a housing allowance. My rent was $200, but my housing allowance was already $150. So that brought my housing down to $50. But it was even less than that when I tossed in the money from the nighttime job. So how did I live in Vietnam for free? I had housing allowance. I had 2 jobs. My second job paid for all of my expenses of my housing, of my food, of my petrol, my gas for my motorbike that I bought. I ended up buying two, one used, one new. I recommend new, but that's a different video. You can easily go to Vietnam if you choose so and live for very cheap, inexpensive, but you have to realize each district has different qualities of living. Each district has different vibes and feelings to it. Each district has different types of people. Maybe you want to live with the foreigners. Maybe you want to live in the countryside. I live more in the countryside in Hocmon district. This is, I guess, the old D14. Now, I highly recommend that if you do something like this, you try to think it through and try to save as much money as possible. Being that I had housing allowance and 2 jobs, I was able to save most of the pay from my first job. So let's sum this video up and talk about pay again. So if my nighttime job was paying me maybe an extra $400 per month on average. My daytime job was about $1,500 per month. So on a good month, I could clear about $2,000, which honestly isn't a lot, right? It's not a lot. But you also have to realize that I was saving most of that first paycheck, almost all of it. So every month I was saving on average $1,200 US to $1,500 US every single month. Every single month. Most foreigners do not do this in Vietnam. Most foreigners I've noticed don't do this even in other parts of Asia, China, Thailand, Japan. They don't do this. They don't do this at all. Even back home in America, if I asked most of my friends how much they saved, I think the average savings per month that an American has to fall back on is only $500. So I moved to Vietnam. I had a lower cost of living, which is so important, and I was able to save more, live more. By the end of my first year of teaching, which was probably only in total maybe a 9 month, because we had like holidays and it was lots of breaks. Plus the summertime, public school is in session on the summertime. I probably saved in Vietnam maybe $7,000 or $8,000. I say 7,000 because I did buy a brand new motorbike, which I recommend. When I was dollar cost averaging, renting or using, taxi services, it just came out better to buy a brand new motorbike, a scooter. So, how did I live for free? I had 2 jobs. I saved 1 paycheck almost in its entirety. I had an apartment that had housing allowance via my first job and a housing situation that was already fully furnished. Everything I needed was already included. I recommend, if you want to live abroad, which you can do, that you explore your options, because some of these companies are okay. Some of them are complicated. Now, make sure you pay close attention to the contracts, because sometimes in the contracts, they will either be too simple or too detailed. I've seen contracts that at the end of the day, it didn't have any working hours on it. So the working hours was to the, interpretation, to the convenience of the company, meaning they could change your working hours or schedule anytime they wanted to. You could go from having 15, 20 or more hours per week to having 1 or 2 hours per week, which isn't good. I saw one contract, which maybe I'll put on the screen here, right? I think it was on page 13 or 14. It had a very bad line in this contract. This wasn't the first contract that I've seen like this. In the contract, it says something like, if you decide to leave the company you have to pay the company back in fees, damages, and other expenses. Some of them said that you would have to pay $2,000 US. Some said $3,000 US or more. This is the truth, and I will give you the receipt on that one because I have a contract from a company. I'm not sure whether or not I should say the company. Maybe that's for a different video, to where I have rejected this company at least 3 times. 2 times they sent me contracts. I rejected them both. And I can easily see how someone could fall into the trap of working for a company like this and not having a very fulfilling job, role, or experience. So for this video of how to live in Vietnam, how I lived in Vietnam for free, I hope I was able to give you all the information, at least a good amount of information, to help you get an overview. Just an overview, right? An overview. Now, I will say this in this video and in other videos is that if you want to do some teaching abroad, you have to have qualifications. You can't, or you shouldn't just be any old person just trying to hop in and be a backpacker, a budgeteer, a vacationer. That's a different type of lifestyle, and that has its own drawbacks in itself. You have to have your bachelor's degree. You have to have a TEFL, a Teaching English as a Foreign Language certification, 120 hour, 180 hour. I have a 180 hour level 5 English certification. You have to have experience. 3 things, right? You have to have experience. Most companies prefer you to have at least 2 years experience legally, so that can help you with your visa and work permit situation. You need to have and pass a criminal background check. You have to be a good citizen, good boys, good girls, good men and women. On top of that, you have to have a passport, preferably from an English-speaking country. USA, Canada, the UK. Within the UK, that includes England, Ireland, maybe Scotland, Australia, South Africa. Technically is included in this native speaking, although I have my own reservation and opinions about that. But once again, another video. You also need to have enough money in savings, because out here we get paid once per month for most companies. I like that my first job, my primary school job in Vietnam, I was being paid monthly, but in comparison to my nighttime job, I was being paid bi-weekly. So one was giving me money every month, one was giving me money every 2 weeks. So I was, in some cases, getting money every week. You know, it was kind of offset. I would have a gap week in there sometimes, but it felt good getting paid almost every week. But that was just how I structured it. Now, I think we covered everything. Save your money. Have bravery. Explore. I hope that this is a very fulfilling video for you. I hope you enjoyed the footage, and I hope that you too can also see places like Vietnam if you want to go that route. This was in terms of working. If you have any questions, you can always drop a comment below. You can always send me an email. And you can always just make a video response, just asking questions. I'm more than happy to add you on, like, you know, in the email or, you know, WhatsApp or any of these other applications so we can talk more intimately. So, until next time, this is Nash Jordan. I am Jordan. I am your mentor for Mentor Inspired. Have a good day.